Hi, I'm Lucille. At our family BBQ, while everyone passed potato salad and smiled for pictures, my sister looked me dead in the eye, smirked, and said, "Time to move out." They laughed. But none of them knew I already owned the house. Worse than the insult was the history, the years of being erased, spoken over, treated like a guest in the place I sacrificed to keep standing. How many barbecues have you been to where the real fire won on the grill, but behind every fake smile? Ever been told you didn't belong in the home you held together? The grill was already smoking when I pulled up to the house I grew up in. The same oak tree stood stubborn near the fence, its branches now heavier than I remembered, bowing over the yard like an old memory refusing to fade. From the front porch, I could already hear laughter grins, specifically cutting through the air like it had a point to prove. Fort Worth summer heat wasn't kind to polyester, but I wore the dress anyway. Navy blue, no prints, no statement, just clean lines and purpose. My mom always said I dressed like someone with something to hide. Maybe I did. Maybe I just got tired of being visible for the wrong reasons. The backyard hadn't changed. The patio lights strung above were still the same from when Dad hung them for my graduation party. Only difference now was the people standing beneath them, familiar, yet suddenly foreign. I nodded at a few faces. Most didn't nod back. I wasn't surprised. I spotted Bryn holding court near the cooler, her hand curled around a sparkling water, like it was some kind of social currency. Hair perfect, laugh loud. That same over-rehearsed performance she'd mastered in college. She didn't see me at first, or pretended not to. "Lucille!" Mom called out from behind the grill, wiping her hands on a dish towel that had long since lost its print. "Grab a plate and mingle a bit. Don't just lurk around the edge." "I just got here," I said, but she'd already turned away. Typical. Delphine stood off near the side fence, arms crossed, eyes tracking everyone like she was guarding the place. She wasn't staff anymore, but no one ever really told her to stop showing up for things. Part of me was grateful she still did. I eased toward the drink table, eyes scanning the crowd. People laughed, talked, passed paper plates in judgment. I caught Bryn's glance. She smirked. "Lucille," she said, loud enough for a few heads to turn. "Glad you could join us. So have you found your own place yet, or are we still living the teenage dream?" A couple guests chuckled. One of Bryn's friends from work, I couldn't remember his name, looked me over like it just spilled mustard on a white shirt. My fingers tightened around the plastic cup I hadn't even filled yet. I could feel the heat crawl up my neck, but I didn't move. Didn't give her that satisfaction. "I own the dream," I said calmly, "and the land it sits on." She blinked just for a split second. Then the smirk returned, glossier than before. "Sure, Lou. Keep telling yourself that." I didn't respond. I just moved on toward the table, toward the name tags. Someone thought they were clever. Or cruel. Probably both. Mine read, "Lucille Resident Mooch." I stared at it for a long moment. A few guests snickered. Bryn shrugged like it was harmless fun. "Come on," she said. "We all know it's a joke. Lighten up." A woman I didn't recognize leaned over to whisper to her husband, "Wait, she still lives here?" I peeled the sticker off slowly, folding it once, then again, before sliding it into my pocket. Not out of shame, just a reminder. People forget screenshots. They remember how silence made them uncomfortable. I took my plate and sat on the far end of the yard, away from the cluster of white folding chairs. The ribs were dry. The coleslaw too sweet. Everything tasted like trying too hard. A breeze moved through the yard, and for a second, I let myself slip backward into memory dad, coughing in the living room while I heated soup in that same old microwave. Me carrying his weight, literally and metaphorically, while Bryn posted filtered family photos on Instagram from 4 states away. They called it duty when I stayed. I called it love. Now they call it dependency. I call it silence they never earned. Delphine passed by, handed me a napkin without a word. She looked down at the folded name tag in my hand, raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. She didn't need to. Let her smirk. Let them all sip and laugh and congratulate themselves. I didn't come for the food. I didn't come for the family. I came because I brought something stronger than comebacks, and it was folded neatly in my purse. Later, as the sun dipped and the citronella candles fought a losing battle with the Texas mosquitoes, I walked toward the back corner of the yard. From there, I could see the whole spread guests mingling, kids chasing each other barefoot, Bryn posing for someone's photo like she was being paid to look unbothered. She lifted a glass to toast something or someone. I didn't care. My hand brushed the envelope inside my bag. The papers inside had weight not just in ink and legal standing, but in what they represented. Reckoning. She thinks it's still her house. I turned away from the crowd, slipping past the garden table, where someone was refilling solo cups with lemonade, like nothing had happened. They laughed. They clinked glasses. I drifted toward the photo wall Bryn had set up by the patio, a makeshift display of framed memories, hanging on twine between two poles, all lit with string lights, like we were in a catalog. From a distance, the display looked warm, polished, curated. Up close, it felt like evidence. Bryn stood near the microphone with her signature champagne flute, wearing that brand-name confidence like a second skin. She tapped the glass with a fork. Everyone, just a quick moment. I wanted to surprise Mom tonight with something meaningful. She stepped aside, revealing a newly framed collage on an easel. Laughter faded. Phones came out. Cameras clicked. Every photo had been chosen with care. Bryn and Leo posing with Mom in matching Christmas sweaters. Bryn hugging Dad on the beach, her face glowing under the sunset. Leo holding his daughter at her birthday party in the backyard. And me? I wasn't in a single shot. Not a blurry background. Not a hand reaching in. Not even a photo of the house during the years I kept it from falling apart. Nothing. No one said anything. No one gasped. Just silence, as if my absence wasn't a mistake, but a correction. I didn't blink, didn't move. They didn't forget, I told myself. They chose not to remember. The applause came anyway, polite, obligatory. I stepped back and turned toward the buffet, my heels crunching the grass. A few people made space for me, like I'd wandered into the wrong scene. I didn't eat. I didn't drink. Later, someone called out, "Time for cake!" The lights shifted as Bryn reappeared, with a rectangular sheet cake, white frosting, floral edges, and the words, "To the children who keep this family strong." I scanned it automatically. Bryn, Leo, Grace. No Lucille. No mention. No space left. Just one more name too many for the frosting budget, I guessed. "Oh, we didn't want to crowd it," Bryn said quickly, eyes darting toward mine. "You know how the bakery limits characters." Delphine, standing at the corner of the patio, raised one eyebrow. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. I offered a small smile, the kind you use when you've already heard the punchline 1,000 times. Inside the house, I found a moment to breathe. The living room still had that faint scent of lemon cleaner and old upholstery. I wandered into the kitchen, then toward the fridge. There, in the bottom corner of a magnetic frame, was a drawing I made when I was 8 or family, stick figures and all. My name had been written in purple marker. Now it looked more like a smudge, faded, like I was slowly being erased from my own story. Too intense. That's what they'd always said. Too serious. Too dramatic. I used to believe them. I slipped my phone into airplane mode. No one was going to text me anyway. Back outside, the party had shifted to cake slices and casual jokes. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, smiling when it felt required. I paused near the fire pit, close enough to hear a guest ask Bryn, "So is Lucille still in between jobs?" Bryn didn't correct him, just smiled politely, like it wasn't worth the breath. In between jobs? I co-founded a startup now worth 7 figures. I worked 15-hour days for 3 years straight, but I never posted about it. I didn't host webinars or write thought pieces or slap inspirational quotes on LinkedIn. I built something quietly, something real. And yet, here I was, still wearing the cloak they'd wrapped around me years ago. The misunderstood one. the one they politely talked around, the filler between their sentences. Bryn laughed with Mom near the cake table, their hands touching as they cut into it like they were carving out legacy. I watched them from the edge of the patio. I've been generous, I thought. I've been silent. I've been edited out. I reached for my purse, the one I hadn't let out of my sight since I walked through that gate. My hand closed around the envelope inside. Not for comfort, for control. Let's see how they feel when the truth is back in the picture. I stepped back from the table, my hand still wrapped around the strap of my purse. They kept laughing, slicing cake, sipping wine from plastic goblets like this was any other summer evening. From where I stood, it all looked like a play. Neatly cast, perfectly staged. And I was never part of the script. I moved inside the house quietly, past the murmurs, the half-hearted smiles. The air was cooler indoors, still, the kind of stillness that made you aware of your breath. I walked down the hall and into the office Dad used in his last months. My laptop was still there, one of the few things I hadn't packed up yet, mostly because I didn't trust anyone to keep it untouched. I opened it and logged in. The screen glowed softly. I navigated to an email I'd read more times than I could count. Lucy, you stayed. You sacrificed. You gave up more than they'll ever understand. I want you to know this house, this burden was never meant to be yours. But you carried it like it was. I can't fix what I let slide. But don't let them erase you, not again. Love, Dad. I sat there, reading it one more time, letting his words steady me. It wasn't validation I needed, it was clarity. His voice reminded me that my silence hadn't been cowardice. It had been grief. A long, heavy, aching grief I hadn't known how to speak out loud. Back outside, the sun had dipped a little lower. The golden light stretched longer across the grass. I was on my way to refill my water when a small hand tugged at the hem of my dress. "Why don't they like you?" my niece asked. Her face was tilted up, honest and unfiltered, holding none of the venom the adults passed around like wine. I crouched to meet her eyes. "Sometimes," I said softly, "grown-ups don't understand kindness until they lose it." She nodded as if she knew exactly what I meant. That stung more than anything Bryn had said all night. I gave her a quick hug and sent her running back toward the cornhole boards. I turned toward the side of the house, toward the garage. I hadn't been in there all evening. The smell of old tools and dust met me as I pulled the door open. Light from a bare bulb buzzed overhead. In the far corner, tucked behind a stack of moving boxes, was the drawer I had hidden years of documentation in repair receipts, tax statements, inspection letters. He'd been keeping track not for them, but for the day someone would question what I had done for this place, for this family. I opened the folder and ran my hand over the stack. I'd never wanted to use these as weapons. They were supposed to be proof of care. But in a house like this, where silence became ammunition, maybe care had to speak louder. From the window, I could see the kids still playing in the yard. For a moment, it was easy to pretend I was one of them again, running barefoot, chasing fireflies, believing I belonged here. But this house wasn't the same. They hadn't just painted the walls or swapped out the curtains. They had erased pieces of it, rearranged it to fit their narrative. This house wasn't about property lines or appraised value. It was about history, about Dad's laughter echoing through the kitchen, about Mom humming over the stove when she still cooked, about a girl who learned to carry grief in silence while her siblings vacationed in cities they couldn't pronounce. This house was never about bricks, I whispered. It was about memory, and they're burning it. I took a breath and pulled out my phone. A single text. "Be ready to move. This ends tonight." My lawyer responded within seconds. "Standing by." I closed the folder, tucked it into my tote, and shut the garage door behind me. As I stepped back toward the yard, the smell of barbecue lingered in the air smoke layered over sweetness, like celebration rotting at the edges. No one noticed I had disappeared. No one noticed I'd returned. Perfect. They wanted quiet. They wanted quiet. I'll give them a silence they'll never forget. I walked back into the yard with purpose, but not rage. My heels pressed into the dry grass with more weight than usual, or maybe I just noticed it now. How every step carried something I'd been holding in for too long. The string lights above flickered slightly as the dusk settled deeper. The party hadn't changed much. Same clusters of people, same half-interested conversations. But I had changed. I wasn't just present, I was watching, calculating. I spotted Marcy by the side table, a plate balanced on her forearm, sipping wine and talking to a cousin I hadn't spoken to since Dad's funeral. She caught my eye, offered a soft smile, and waved me over. "Hey, Lou," she said, her voice genuinely warm. "Didn't expect to see you tonight." "I wouldn't miss it," I replied, slipping a thin folder from my tote and handing it to her as casually as if it were a birthday card. "You work in real estate, right?" Marcy nodded, brows raised. "Sure do." "Why?" "Take a look." She flipped through the pages. Receipts, invoices, dated correspondence, all tied to the house. Roof repairs, foundation stabilization, plumbing overhauls, pest treatment, all paid from my personal account. "I thought Bryn handled all this," she said, her voice a touch smaller now. I didn't blink. She handled the complaints. I handled the damage. Marcy looked up at me, truly looked. Her face shifted from curiosity to discomfort. And just like that, something cracked. It wasn't loud, but it was real. A laugh rang out near the deck Bryn, holding court again. I moved slowly in that direction. Sterling, Dad's old friend, had arrived sometime while I was inside. He stood next to Bryn, nodding politely as she explained something with animated hands. "She thinks she's the backbone of this house," Bryn chuckled. "We all know the only thing she's consistent at is living here rent-free." Sterling's expression didn't change, but his tone cut the air clean. "Your dad told me this house was meant for Lucille," he said. "Only one who stayed. Only one who showed up when it counted." The group around them went still. Bryn froze for half a beat, then smiled too wide, too stiff. "Sterling, that's sweet, but Dad said a lot of things when he was on meds." "He said it before he got sick," Sterling replied. Then he walked away, leaving her standing there with her smirk half melted. I didn't interrupt. I didn't thank him. I didn't have to. He remembered what they'd tried so hard to erase. The whispers began to weave through the yard like slow-moving smoke. People were talking quietly, carefully, but talking. I passed two cousins murmuring about the folder Marcy still held. Another uncle tilted his head when he saw Sterling disappear into the house. I didn't need to fan the flames. I just needed to let the truth breathe. Across the yard, Bryn's laughter started sounding thinner. Her gestures became sharper, more performative. She tried rallying the energy again, bringing Mom into another story about how she coordinated the whole event. But now, the eyes around her weren't shining with admiration. They were searching, weighing. I stood at the base of the porch, fingers brushing the banister. I remembered when I was 9 and scraped my knee right on that step. Dad carried me inside, humming some off-key tune I hadn't heard in years. Everyone had panicked, except him. They said I was too sensitive, that I needed to toughen up. But now I could see it clearly. I wasn't the fragile one. I was the one who noticed when something was cracking beneath the surface. Dad once told me, after a particularly rough week, "You're not the problem, Lucy. You're just the only one who won't pretend the roof isn't leaking." And now, for the first time, it wasn't just me who saw it. As the crowd thinned near the drink table, Bryn appeared by my side, her voice low and tight. "Are you seriously trying to ruin this night?" I turned toward her, measured and still. "I'm not trying," I said, meeting her stare without blinking. "I am succeeding by telling the truth." She inhaled sharply, lips parting like she had a comeback locked and loaded, but she didn't fire it. Instead, she stepped back, heels catching slightly in the soil, and walked away without another word. She walked away, but I could feel it for the first time. She was the one unraveling. I walked back toward the folding tables, ignoring the low hum of Bryn's voice behind me. People were starting to glance my way more often now, not out of politeness, but curiosity. Something had shifted. They could feel it, too. I grabbed a cup of lemonade just to have something to do with my hands and kept my eyes on her across the lawn, like a chess player watching a piece she already knew would fall. The sun was dipping low, throwing longer shadows across the yard. I found a moment of quiet near the edge of the house, where the fence blocked the wind. That's when I saw Delphine. She stepped around the corner, moving like she had something to say but didn't want an audience. She reached into her handbag and pulled out an envelope. "He told me to keep this," she said, her voice low, steady. "Said it was for you. For when you needed it." I opened it slowly. Inside was a scanned copy of an old deed draft and a short notarized letter from my father, dated 6 months before he passed. It was never filed, but the message was clear. Lucille is to inherit the house. She's the one who stayed. She's the one who kept it standing. Delphine didn't linger. She gave me a look that said, "Now it's yours to carry," and slipped away like smoke. I folded the papers and tucked them into the inside pocket of my purse, where the others waited. The weight felt different now, less burden, more ballast. Back at the drink station, I heard Mom chatting with one of the neighbors. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but some sentences don't ask permission to be heard. "Well," Mom said with a laugh, "technically the house is in Lucille's name, but Bryn likes to act like it's hers." The neighbor let out a surprised chuckle. "Oh?" I didn't move, but I saw Bryn freeze near the appetizer table. She turned fast, too fast, stepping into the conversation before Mom could add anything else. "That's not what she meant," Bryn said quickly, her voice rising just a little too much. "It's a figure of speech." Mom blinked, confused. The neighbor just nodded slowly, holding her glass like she suddenly wasn't sure if she wanted another sip. I made my way toward a group of cousins gathered near the grill. Their conversation died down when I approached, but I didn't take it personally. "Not anymore." "You know," I said casually, "I just got the HVAC replaced last fall. Cost a fortune, but it was overdue." One cousin raised an eyebrow. "I thought Bryn handled all that?" I shrugged. "She handled the menu. I handled the mold." That got a quiet laugh. Someone else asked about the roof, and I answered without bitterness, just facts. For the first time, they listened. "I never knew," one said. "No one ever asked," I replied. Bryn must have sensed their grip on the narrative slipping. She raised her voice suddenly from across the yard, holding up her wine glass like it was a beacon. "Let's all raise a glass to Mom for holding this family together through everything." A few people clapped. Less than before. I caught someone glancing in my direction mid-toast. Another fiddled with their phone. Even Mom looked unsure whether to smile or scold. Bryn kept talking, pouring honey over her own voice, trying to recapture the crowd. But the air was different now. People weren't nodding. They were noticing. I walked past the grill, headed for the patio steps when she cornered me again. "Bryn. Brittle and too bright." "You keep pushing," she hissed under her breath. "And this'll get ugly." I didn't blink. "You should have thought of that before underestimating me." She stared at me like she didn't recognize my face. Maybe she didn't. Maybe this was the first time she'd actually looked at me without trying to flatten me into something convenient. That was the last warning I'd give her. Everything after moved like thick honey slow, deliberate, suspended in tension. I stepped back into the yard just as the porch lights flickered on, washing the space in a soft amber glow. It felt almost staged, like the lighting cue had been timed for a performance neither of us agreed to, but only one of us was prepared for. Except this time, I wasn't reciting lines. I was rewriting the scene permanently. As I made my way past the string lights and half-eaten hors d'oeuvres, I noticed a few of Bryn's colleagues from the firm. They looked away the second our eyes met, suddenly interested in their champagne flutes or invisible dust on their jackets. I didn't bother to smile. I wasn't here to smooth things over. I wasn't here to play nice. I was here for the truth. And the truth had been waiting for this exact moment. That's when it happened. A faint metallic voice crackled through the air, muffled, glitchy, but unmistakable. Everyone around me heard it. Heads turned. Conversations hiccuped and died in midair. The sound was coming from the table near the wine coolers, specifically from Bryn's purse left gaping open, like it had nothing to hide. Corbin's voice. Cold, calculated, caught on record. Just get her out and the place is ours. You'll get your share once the deal closes. It echoed sharp and intimate in the worst possible way. I didn't blink. Forks froze halfway to lips. Eyebrows raised. Someone gasped, and across the yard, I saw Bryn's face go a shade paler than the white wine in her glass. She lunged for the purse like it might still save her, frantically pawing at the phone, trying to shut it off, but the damage was already done. The words had landed, and they stuck. I didn't rush. I let the silence expand, let the betrayal vibrate through every molecule in the air. I wanted everyone to sit with it, to feel the weight I'd been carrying in private, now exposed in public. When Bryn finally turned to look at me, flushed, desperate, mouth open, like she could will time to reverse, I met her eyes without flinching. "You wanted me out?" I said evenly. "I want you exposed." Her lips moved, but no sound came. What could she say? Denial was off the table now. I turned and walked straight to Leo, who stood stiffly near the grill with a paper plate he hadn't touched. I handed him a folder I'd printed the day before. The cover was plain, but the contents inside would rip everything wide open. "Here's the loan," I said. "She used the house as collateral. Without telling me. Without my consent." He took it from me slowly, like it might bite. Flipping through the pages, he read the bank's header, the loan amounts, the forged signatures. I saw his brow furrow deeper with every turn of the page. "This is," he paused. "This is fraud." Bryn stormed over, voice rising to match the unraveling. "You're seriously doing this here? Now? With all these people around?" I didn't look away. "When were you going to tell us? After you sold the house? Or once the wire transfers cleared?" Her eyes flashed. "You always make yourself the victim." "I was never the victim," I said, my voice steady. "But I was tired of being treated like a ghost in the house I held together." Gasps. Whispers. People were no longer pretending not to listen. They were leaning in. And they were finally putting it together. The repairs, the missing money, the secrets I never volunteered, but Bryn never owned. Mom stepped in then, her voice brittle. "Please, let's not do this here." I looked at her, soft but unwavering. "Then when? Because if not here, it'll get buried. Like everything else." That's when Bryn broke. The tears came fast and theatrical, panicked, not remorseful. She pointed at me, called me bitter, manipulative, said I was ruining the family. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shrink. Because the louder she got, the calmer I became. From across the yard, I caught Delphine watching, arms folded, expression unreadable. But her silence wasn't fear. It was resignation. She had known all along, and now everyone else would know too. I walked calmly to the dessert table, where the peach cobbler sat untouched. I placed a sealed manila envelope right in the center. "This is just the beginning," I said loud enough for all to hear. "By tomorrow morning, everyone will know who really owns this house." I turned to Bryn one last time, her face contorted in disbelief, as if she still believed the room belonged to her. "And who's been living in a fantasy?" I stepped back from the buffet table, my fingers barely grazing the manila envelope I'd left sitting there, bold as a challenge, like a lit match in a pile of dry kindling, just daring someone to act. The air in the yard changed, dense now, thick with tension. Even the cicadas, relentless all evening, had gone quiet. Maybe they sensed something unspoken, something final. Then came the voice. "So, you're the mooch, huh?" It wasn't loud, just smug enough to draw blood. A man I didn't recognize, some stringy guy with a gelled haircut and too tight collar, probably one of Bryn's work buddies, grinned like he'd said something clever. I didn't blink, didn't flinch. "No," I said calmly, my voice flat. "I'm the reason there's still a roof over this barbecue." A cough broke somewhere in the back. One woman shifted uncomfortably and glanced at her phone, pretending to scroll. But no one laughed. No one came to his rescue. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was recognition. Some of them knew, some were starting to. A few moments later, Bryn clapped her hands, desperate to reclaim the spotlight. "All right, everyone, let's take our seats, shall we?" She tried to sound lighthearted, cheerful even. But her voice cracked on the last syllable. She sounded like someone still pretending the house wasn't on fire. People began to move, slowly, awkwardly, all trying to look casual, as if they hadn't just witnessed something split wide open. But I noticed how their eyes never fully looked away from me. Not in fear, in curiosity, in realization. I walked toward the long dinner table. Every place was perfectly set, napkins folded, name cards handwritten in Bryn's looping cursive. But not mine. No card, no chair. Just a mismatched folding seat tucked at the far end near the trash bins, like an afterthought someone regretted. I paused. Bryn's eyes flicked toward me, then away sharp, then cold. She didn't have to say it. She'd orchestrated this. She wanted me invisible. And then Delphine moved. She walked past the cooler without a word, lifted one of the proper chairs from the middle of the table, one with arms, with a cushion, and carried it directly to my side. Placed it right in the center, right in the heart of it all. She didn't say a thing, just met my eyes and gave a tiny nod before walking back to her seat. That small gesture spoke louder than any toast ever could. I sat down. That's when Bryn snapped. "This was supposed to be a peaceful dinner," she barked, arms flailing slightly, as if she could fan the flames back into smoke. "A calm, civil evening, and you've turned it into a circus, Lucille." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't stand. I didn't even break eye contact. "No," I said. "It was supposed to be another staged performance. You just didn't expect anyone to pull the curtain back." Her cheeks flushed. Her hands clenched into trembling fists. "You think you're the victim. You always twist things, always make it about you. You're manipulative. You're bitter. You're exhausting." I looked around at the guests. Some had stopped eating, some had never started. Some sat quietly, forks midair, watching Bryn instead of me. The tide had shifted. "You want to talk about exhausting?" I asked. "I paid the back taxes. I handled the permits. I fixed the cracked foundation when no one else wanted to deal with it. I kept this place standing while you curated brunch spots on Pinterest." Bryn stepped forward, reckless now. "You're just a squatter with a grudge." I laughed. Quietly, not out of amusement but relief. "Actually, I'm the legal property owner. The documents are in that envelope." I nodded toward the buffet table. "The deed, the will, the proof. It's all right there." Gasps moved like wind down the table. A wine glass tilted and was caught just in time. Mom stood abruptly. Her voice shook. "Enough, both of you. Just stop. Please. I just wanted one night of peace." I looked at her then. Really looked. Her hair was thinner than I remembered. Her hands trembled when they clutched the napkin. But I also remembered the lullabies. The way she used to hum as she brushed my hair. The time she let me stay home just because my heart had been broken, not my bones. "I did too," I said gently. "But peace doesn't come from pretending, and it doesn't come from protecting the one who causes the war." She sat back down slowly, eyes glassy, lips pressed tight. Bryn's mascara was smudging now. Her voice cracked. "You want to make this legal? Fine, let's do it. You'll regret it." I stood not to fight, but to end the pretending. "You've mistaken my silence for surrender. That ends now." I turned toward the guests, toward the envelope. "Tomorrow, your signature won't matter," I said, facing Bryn one last time. "Mine already does." And I sat back down, this time at the table, in a seat that finally belonged to me. I didn't need to say it twice. When I stepped back into the center of the yard, the envelope in my hand, the air shifted. I wasn't Lucille, the emotional one. I wasn't the black sheep or the girl with a chip on her shoulder anymore. I was the one holding the truth, and everyone knew it. I walked slowly toward the drink table, heels crunching softly on the gravel, deliberate like I had all the time in the world. I placed the envelope down carefully, in full view, and let it sit for just a moment. Long enough for the murmurs to begin again. Long enough for Bryn's smile to falter. Then I opened it. Page by page, I laid them out. The notarized deed transfer, dated and signed. Tax receipts with my name, in bold, property insurance statements. Mortgage payoff notices, documents no one could argue with. I wasn't here to make a scene. I was here to end one. I didn't say a word until the last page was pressed flat. This home, I said, calm and direct, legally belongs to me. It has for over 2 years. A hush swept over the crowd like a cold wind. Heads turned, eyes widened. A few people instinctively looked at Bryn, expecting her to burst into laughter and explain it all away, some prank, some joke, some misunderstanding. But her mouth hung open. She looked like someone who'd just seen her own reflection crack. I turned to her, my voice unwavering. You called me a guest in my own home. Turns out you've been squatting. Someone choked on their drink. A fork clattered to the ground. The silence that followed was to dramatis, it was damning. I didn't wait for Bryn to react. I walked with purpose toward the porch. Reaching into my purse, I pulled out a small brass plaque. The one I had custom made weeks ago, just in case I ever needed it. It wasn't flashy, it didn't shout, but it told the truth. From under the planter, I retrieved the cordless drill I'd hidden earlier. The quiet whir of it slicing into wood was the only sound in the air. And then the plaque was there, fixed to the entry post for all to see. L. Dorn, legal owner, since 2021. Behind me, whispers turned into disbelief. Gasps rose and fell like a slow tide. And through it all, Delphine stood in the garden, arms crossed. No words, no smile, just a single, solemn nod. Her approval didn't need sound. That was when the unraveling began. You're insane! Bryn's voice finally returned, shrill and cracking. You ambushed your family in front of strangers. How could you? I didn't turn around. I protected what I built. When no one else would. You're being vindictive. You're tearing this family apart. No, a voice said quietly, yet firmly. It was Leo. He stepped forward from the patio's edge, face pale but steady. You did that when you took out a second mortgage in a home that wasn't yours. Gasps again, sharper this time. One of the older cousins actually took a step back. Bryn's face drained of color. She looked around, eyes desperate, scanning the crowd for anyone to rescue her. No one moved. Even Mom sat down in one of the white lawn chairs, staring at the grass like it might swallow her whole. I'm sorry this had to happen here, I said, turning slightly to address the guests. But the truth doesn't wait for a convenient time. Sometimes it just walks through the front door and doesn't ask permission. I turned fully to Bryn one last time. You have 24 hours to vacate the property, I said. I won't involve the police yet. Her lip trembled. You wouldn't. I would, I said quietly. And I will. I walked toward the house. I didn't slam the door. I didn't have to. The click of it shutting behind me was louder than any scream. It echoed off the walls of the porch, down the walkway, all the way to the curb. Inside, the house felt different. Not cold, not familiar, just mine. The silence wrapped around me like something earned. I stepped to the front window and watched. People were leaving now, some briskly, others slowly, like they were still trying to process what they had just witnessed. A few glanced back toward the house, toward me. Then I heard it. A scream-raw and rattling from the front yard. Bryn. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I let it pierce the night and dissolve into the silence she once forced me to live with. Out on the porch, the brass plaque caught the light, gleaming like a medal earned in battle. It didn't reflect memory or favor, just fact. They built their lies on my silence, and I just reclaimed every brick. They built their lies on my silence. I just reclaimed every brick. The sun crept in through the living room windows, soft and steady. Morning light hit the brass plaque beside the porch steps. Dorn, legal owner, since 2021, casting a small glint across the weathered wood. It was quiet. No voices. No laughter echoing off the siding. No false cheers or raised glasses. Just the house, finally still. Bryn had left sometime after midnight. No note, no words. Just the slam of a car door and taillights cutting through the dark. I watched her from the upstairs hallway, one hand on the banister, and let her go without stopping her. I didn't expect an apology. And none came. Leo had texted around 6 in the morning. I should have seen it. I'm sorry, I believed he meant it. But it didn't change much. Some wounds don't need an audience to bleed. Mom didn't call. Not that I was surprised. For her, discomfort had always been something to sweep beneath the rug, rather than face in full view. I stepped outside to clear the yard. Plates half full of food were scattered on the tables. Confetti from one of the centerpieces blew lazily across the lawn. A bottle of wine lay tipped over in the grass. Delphine showed up around 9 a.m. Same as always, same as ever. She didn't say anything, just picked up a trash bag and started moving from table to table, wiping things down, collecting what was left behind. We worked in silence, and somehow that felt like grace. Around noon, a neighbor walked up to the fence with a bouquet of store-bought flowers. "Didn't mean to stare last night," she said gently. "Just took guts." "What you did?" I nodded, taking the flowers with a soft thank you. She didn't stay long. No one did. Once everything was cleared, I moved back inside and walked the house slowly, letting the quiet sink in. I traced my fingers along the doorway to the kitchen, where a faint pencil mark still measured my height from when I was 9. The wood was chipped, but the numbers were still legible. I sat on the stairs. Not because I was tired, but because it was the same place I'd once sat and listened to my parents argue behind closed doors about whether to send me away to boarding school. I was 12. They thought I didn't hear, but I heard everything. They chose image over intimacy. I choose truth. I pulled out an old photo from my desk drawer me and Dad on the front porch, ice cream cones in hand, both of us laughing. It wasn't framed. It wasn't polished. But it was ours. I placed it on the mantel above the fireplace, in plain view. A quiet reminder of what mattered, even now. Later that afternoon, I changed the locks. It wasn't dramatic, just overdue. Then I sent the text. Mail forwarding is active for 30 days. I will not engage beyond that. It was firm, not cruel. Final, not vengeful. I didn't need closure from Bryn. I needed distance, and boundaries have a way of creating peace when people can't. As the sun began to dip again, Delphine paused in the hallway with a box in her arms. She looked at me, eyes soft but steady. "You didn't win?" she said. I met her gaze. "No," I reclaimed. She gave a slight smile. "You always had it in you." "I don't want a throne," I told her. "Just peace." That night, I made tea and stood by the kitchen window. The yard was clean now, the porch light was on, and across the yard, the swing Dad had hung when we were kids swayed just slightly in the breeze. Maybe one day, I'll pass this house on to someone who knows how to keep it, not just keep people out. Sometimes, standing your ground doesn't look like yelling. It looks like refusing to move when the world expects you to step aside. I didn't reclaim the house for revenge. I reclaimed it for every time someone told me to be quiet, to let it go, to not make a scene. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that silence can be a survival tool, but truth is the only path to peace. What about you? Have you ever been pushed out of something that was rightfully yours, your voice, your space, your worth? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. If this story touched something in you, type 1 in the comments, or let me know where you're watching from. If it didn't resonate, tell me why your voice matters too. And if you believe in stories that speak to the heart and reflect the real struggles behind family, truth, and healings, subscribe to this channel. More powerful stories are coming your way,